Does a switch really matter when building an IP-based security system? In today's episode of Security Pro Insights, we take a look at often the most overlooked piece of any security-based IP system. However, the switch might be one of the most important pieces to the system's success. Our guest today, Dennis Troxel, is the head engineer with Transition Networks, a leading provider of network infrastructure equipment. His knowledge and expertise guides us through the importance of using and choosing the proper smart managed switch. Hey Dennis, I want to thank you for joining this show today. Would you tell the listening audience a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you're actually at today?
Sure, Scott. I appreciate you having me on today. My name is Dennis Troxel, and I'm with a company called Transition Networks. My background is within the telecommunication and data communication world. Been in that business for 37 years and really worked up through networking. Been working with a number of different vertical market networks like telco carriers, security networks, switching, media conversion, all of those types of fiber to copper type connections. That's really what our company is specialized in.
And currently you work for Transition Networks. In a big overview, can you tell us what the mission of Transition is, what you actually do for your customers?
All right, sure. Transition Networks is a U.S.-based company out of Minnetonka, Minnesota. And what we do is we provide switching and conversion products for fiber to copper. We also provide switching in the security marketplace for power over Ethernet type connections. We also make fiber to the desktop NICs and connections so that our customers can connect up fiber directly to their desktops. And then, of course, we supply small form pluggables, SFPs, and other types of fiber-connected devices. And that's pretty much what we've specialized in. Transition Networks is a 30-year-old company right now. So we're really proud of that. And we're U.S.-based and TAA compliant.
At this point, there might be many already listening saying, why are we talking to someone in the network switch space? And we're going to dive into that. I know you have a solution that has been introduced by Transition Network that is really impactful for the security industry. I want to dive right into that and just ask a simple question. Why does a security professional, or why should a security professional even care about a switch? Isn't this IT's problem?
Well, today, the security networks, of course, we know that security cameras and those types of devices used to be a nicety in our environment, but today they're really become a necessity. And truly where it fits is that those attached devices to those switches, of course, have to be managed. You have to check statuses, look at statistics, look at the video, and it's really part of the customer's responsibility to be able to somewhat look at their network and determine, management for manager purposes, for diagnostic purposes, how their system's actually running. In the past, switches really were kind of like the last thought in a network. So everybody sat down with security devices and said, let's look at cameras and let's look at access control and our card readers and all the fancy stuff. And they kind of forgot there is a infrastructure switch that has to be put into place so that all these devices can communicate and set up a network over IP with that. So the real reason that switching has become more important is that there's a lot more features now offered in switching. It's not just a transmission device. It's more or less a management and diagnostic device also.
So if I were to kind of build a picture here, it kind of sounds like what's going on is if this were an organization, somebody went through and hired a bunch of people, which would be our cameras and devices, Internet of Things devices that we're putting out there on the networks, but they forgot to hire a manager to manage these people. Is that a decent picture for most of us to understand?
That is. What we find out is all the way from the initial installation process of your security network, all the way up to when it's in place, and now you have to take control of that network. What really helps is to have that switching infrastructure give you the capabilities of making sure the simple things like the physical connections. You know, people discount that kind of stuff when they're typically putting an installation together. Like, are the actual cables connected up properly? Are they pinned properly? Those types of things. We start out with that basic infrastructure, and then we even go further than that as far as being able to diagnose other problems. So really, it starts at the installation process and goes all the way out to the total management process once the network is in place.
So really, what a switch can do for a security professional, or the reason it's important to the security professional, is the fact that it brings in all the data points. And again, we're talking about cameras, we're talking about access readers, we're talking about any device that connects to the network. It has the ability to bring in all these points and now give us data that actually is useful for us to understand what is going on with our system at any given time.
That is correct. If we look at the hierarchy of how this developed, most security networks, initial ones, started way back when, and that switch was just an unmanaged switch. It was just there to push the video traffic or the data, let's say if it's wireless access points or whatever those devices are. It was there to power the devices and there to push the data or the video statistics back and forth. As we progressed in our security networking, we've now moved into what are called smart managed switches. And smart managed switches, they are giving you the capabilities and features that we've kind of been talking about a little bit here, as far as, again, there's cable diagnostics as one example. So cable diagnostics means once I plug all the devices into the switch and I actually go check this is actually a test feature, then it will actually go out, check all the pairs in the cable. So there's 4 pairs in a cable, there's 8 wires. So it will check all the pairs. It will make sure that they are in a normal condition, meaning that they are installed properly, they're pinned properly, no one missed a pin, no one swapped a pin, those types of things. It's really important, again, like I said, for just the physical aspect of it, to know, is this a camera problem or is this just a cable problem? And this is what the smart managed switches do, is they give you the diagnostics to tell you, yes, the physical link is actually a problem, not the camera. And what this does is it results in the customers and the integrators being able to have what's called a smart truck roll, which means they already can diagnose a problem before they get there. They don't have to wait till they get on site to actually diagnose a problem. Based on the smart managed switch capabilities, they can already look at and diagnose a problem. And now when they do a truck roll, they know it's a smart truck roll. They know, here's where I need to attack the problem, and I can fix it faster. And it just makes it more efficient, and it makes it a lot less OpEx money on the backhaul of it.
All right, Dennis. So now you have me intrigued, and I already see a major cost savings in this ability to remote diagnose the systems, the devices on the system, and when a truck is rolled by an integrator, theoretically that tech should have a much better idea of what the problem is before he gets there. Now, all of this very intriguing, and we'll dive into this in a little bit more detail here in a moment. I need to step back though. You've mentioned this security-only network, and in my mind, I struggle because I've always been told that IT dominates the world. Who am I to actually give any type of direction to IT that we need to put this special switch that we're going to be talking about in more detail on their network? I mean, don't they control everything?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. So the yes means, yeah, they do control it. They're very strict on how their network is set up, how it works, who can access it. But what we find out in the security networking world is that if you look at the overall picture of multiple companies, multiple small businesses that are doing security, most of the time, I'd say probably the percentage is about 90%. The IT guys want that security network to be a separate network. So what that means is that they will give an access connection to the security network from the IT network, but they almost want it to be a separate entity in itself, and they can still access it. They can still use these capabilities that we're talking about today. But the idea is they like to keep a segregation between the security network and the IT network, and that way, again, if you want to manage all the way out to the devices, you want to do these types of diagnostics. It's very important then to have these more or less smart managed switches in that part of the security network, because again, IT definitely has their network set up, firewalled, managed, but they really like to keep a segregation between the security network and the IT network.
And so, in your experience, then, if they're going to segregate the network and provide I believe it's a VLAN, correct?
They can do that as a segregation. That's correct.
If they were to provide that to me, the security director, then they usually don't have major issues with whatever switch I choose to be a part of that network and to manage that network.
That's a good question, and it really depends on how that's done on a per company basis. Some people build a core network and then they like to use the same manufacturer of the core as they do on the edge. Now, when you look at these smart managed switches, you're going to see that they're part of the outside of the network, right? So they're on the edge and they can be in the aggregation piece of it, but they're not really a core type switch, and they're not made to be. So that's really on a company by company basis how that's determined. As you said, IT typically runs the network, so a lot of times they can decipher which manufacturer switch should be used. And then a lot of times, because it's a separate segregated security network, a lot of times they turn that over to the security people of the company, and they say, you approach the integrators, you talk to them, and you see, let them kind of pick what's best for what they think is best for the network. So it really can go either way. It really depends on what the preference and how the company is set up as far as networking is concerned.
So if I can draw this picture, and I apologize for all my pictures, apologize to everyone for my pictures. It's just how my brain works. So I put in a PoE switch device, a specialty managed switch, and if I'm using one of these smart switches, I connect all my cameras into the switch. That, in essence, is the security-only network. And does this switch then plug into the company's, let's say, Cisco network setup that maybe the company's running on the bigger picture?
It does. Typically, when you look at these switches that are the smart managed security switches, they are going to have their normal copper 10100, 1000 PoE ports, and then they're going to typically have a couple of uplink ports, and those uplink ports could be either copper or fiber. Typically, it's an SFP port, which is for a small form pluggable laser for the fiber connection. And that's typically how it happens is, again, they will give them a fiber connection to the IT network. They will then, like you were saying earlier, do the segregation. It could be VLANs set up to segregate the security network. And the offering can, again, it could either be copper or fiber connection. It depends on where these are located to the core network. But it could be in either medium. It wouldn't matter.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to walk through that a little bit because I believe many of us in the, again, security space as security professionals, sometimes we get intimidated when we start to think about talking with our IT brothers. There's just an aspect of us not knowing enough about the process. So we're afraid to even go to them with an idea because we don't believe we have the confidence and capability to speak that language. So I appreciate you taking that time and being patient with me to just draw up that picture for my mind to understand how this works. Now, I want to dive into this smart managed switch a little bit. Internet of Things is becoming a major aspect, a major conversation piece, because no matter what we do and how efficient we're becoming in our world, everything now touches the network. Security is no different anymore. Pretty much any new installation is an IP camera. Analog is dying. That's my opinion. But I do believe that analog is on its way out. Everything moving to IP. Can you tell me why this smart managed switch again? Let's dive into the reasons why professionals should be looking at a smart managed switch on their security network.
Well, I think it's best to answer your question by looking at some of the features and benefits of what a smart managed switch could offer to the customer.
Well, can we dive back into what we just discussed, which is the remote diagnostics? I think that's very interesting, where we can now
Yeah,
roll a smart truck.
yeah. So there's a couple things. Smart managed switches have a capability where they are are managing directly to the endpoint cameras or attached devices. Could be again access control or card readers. So they have a management link right to that endpoint device. One of the features smart managed switches do is they have a feature called auto power reset. Auto power reset is a feature that can be enabled by the security personnel, and what it really means is that the actual smart managed switch does proactive monitoring directly to the endpoint device for the actual security management people. So what happens is this switch will actually ping the devices, so it makes sure that it has IP connectivity to that device, and it obviously is configurable to a interval time frame of when this pinging is going to occur. The actual switch will monitor the results of that, and it will actually see, does it get a response back from the attached device. If the attached device does not respond, let's say it gets a glitch in it and it just becomes non-responsive, what the smart managed switch will do is it will ping it based on the number of times it is configured for. If it does not get a response during that amount of time, it will then actually reboot the port automatically. This feature really allows the negation of additional truck rolls by integrators or by the guys that are maintaining the network. Because what happens is you can talk to a number of security people, and the first problem they're going to tell you when you ask, what kind of problems do you have? The first thing they say is, camera stopped working. I got to go reset the power. And then it comes back up and it works. So the idea of this feature is that the smart managed switch will proactively monitor the network of the devices. If it does not get a non-responsive device, it will then automatically reboot the device. It actually drops the power on it, and then the camera will reset. The camera comes back up again, and the smart managed switch will record that it has done that particular procedure. It can do it by syslog messages. You can send out SNMP traps. It can do all of those different types of communication to the network people so that they know this occurred. But the idea of this feature is that you do not have to roll a truck, get up into a pole or a parking garage or rafters in a building and go up and reset a camera just because it's not responsive. So the idea of this, again, is to allow them to diagnose and manage a device. It's proactive, so it's not a reactive thing. And then on the OpEx side, of course, you're saving money again because instead of having to run somebody out, one of your personnel during their time and reset a camera, the switch is automatically doing it.
Well, let me ask one additional question then. So if the switch resets or the camera resets, that's great. What if the camera doesn't reset? Will I get a notification? Because there is nothing more frustrating to a security manager than having an event that needs to be investigated only to find out that the camera over that point is out.
Yeah, so what happens with that is if we try to reboot the camera with this feature and it does not come back and work properly, the actual Smart Manage switch again will record a total number of times that it's trying to do this. So as a NOC person or as a management person of the security network, you will get a record that shows the Smart Manage switch tried to do this like 20 times. You know, if I look in the record of the switch and it says happened 1 or 2 times, okay, I know it got a glitch in it, it got rebooted and got fixed, and we're done. If it says 20 times, of course, this is a catastrophic failure. This is something that rebooting the camera will not fix. And now, again, because of the messaging of either a syslog or SNMP, it can actually send out that information. And then, again, this becomes an intelligent truck roll because now the actual monitor of the NOC or of the actual security network will know this is not something that the switch could have fixed by rebooting. Let's take a camera out there because there's a catastrophic problem with it.
So that eliminates.
And again, this is that smart truck roll.
Exactly, and that eliminates frustration number 2. That's when the integrator shows up and they're not prepared to actually fix anything.
Exactly, and then they got to go back, and that's another trip, and it's not good all the way around for the customer or the integrator.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I run into quite a bit when I'm dealing with an IT team is bandwidth. And they're concerned about the cameras that are actually going to be on that network and what times they're actually pushing data. Does your switch have any controls of helping me manage what cameras get the highest priority, or what bandwidth gets used when? I'm just kind of curious how that might work.
So again, Smart Manage switches, they have full layer 2 functionality. So part of that is you have a prioritization in the PoE configuration where you can actually specify that certain cameras have priority over others. So you have a low, high, and critical type setting for that. And then there is also what we call QoS, or quality of service. And this allows me to use 8021P, which is a IP protocol that says this protocol is set and there's a higher priority on this particular protocol as opposed to a lower priority. So there's actually 2 methods that the Smart Manage switches utilize for that. It could be in the PoE prioritization, or it could also be in just the actual IP traffic prioritization, where you can specify, is this a high, medium, or low type bandwidth situation? Who do you want to have prioritization of? There's also rate limiting capabilities. So on a per port basis, you can always set up rate limiting, which what I see this a lot, Scott, is in a hybrid type network. So I might have a store, let's say I have a store environment, and it has cameras in for security, but it also has access control for the doors. It also has let's say a couple wireless access points. If you ever walk through some of the stores, you can get out your iPhone or an iPad and you can hook up to a wireless network in the store. A lot of companies offer that. Well, here's the problem. The security people get concerned about, they don't want the wireless access points like taking up all the data when you have a finite amount of bandwidth on a per switch basis based on the number of ports it has. So the idea of QoS is you can do bandwidth rate limiting, which now says, hey, I can turn that wireless access port down to, 10 meg, let's say. So it does not take up all the traffic that you would have for your other PoE access devices that you have on the network.
I think that has to be a very effective tool to help, again, two managers, security manager and then the IT manager, work together in this as a team.
That's correct, and I know what you were saying earlier about how customers get scared of talking to the IT people and kind of they over their heads maybe or something. But you know what? When you start talking these types of features like QoS and bandwidth rate limiting, that's on the same level as the IT network is, and they obviously understand those type of properties that you have available to use. And like you're saying, it makes a lot easier working environment between the two networks when you can show that the security network switching works just like the IT network switching does.
Does a smart managed switch help me with password management? And what I mean by that is, can I check a technician's work to ensure that the default passwords were actually changed at the camera level?
So the smart managed switch allows you to manage all the way out to where the camera is. In a smart managed switch, what happens is there's actually a software feature called DMS, which stands for the Device Management System. This is a software feature that actually goes out, touches all the devices, and builds a topology map right on the GUI interface of the switch to show you what port, what type of device it is. Is it a camera? Is it a wireless access point? Is it an access control panel? What it happens to be. And then it gives you a dashboard window that actually lets you log directly into the cameras. So if I have a camera sitting out on my network, I have full control through the switch of going out and logging directly into that camera. I can change configuration of it. I can focus and zoom it. I can do whatever kind of change I want. Because what happens is the smart managed switch is actually tying you into the actual camera's configuration menu. So when you're looking at the screen of the switch, it's actually the screen of the camera's menu that you would normally look at if you just went into a camera and looked at it. So the switch is giving you the capability of reaching out to each attached device and managing it directly. I can log into it, and like I said, make those kind of changes or do some focusing or zoom in it if I wanted to change those things. I can reboot it manually if I want to. I can actually check the diagnostics directly to that device through this dashboard window. And then, of course, I can see things like how much bandwidth is being used, and I can also see are there any network messages? Maybe somebody unplugged the camera. It's gonna actually show me on the topology map that camera has disconnected, and the way it does it, it changes the color of it on the screen, so that now I'm aware that that camera has gone away or disconnected, or there's some kind of issue with it. Of course, the normal indications will still be there. It'll send SNMP trap if you have that set up. The syslog will show the links down. The port configuration shows the ports out. So you still get the same warnings, but the idea is that you will get the messaging right off the camera telling you that there was a network disconnection with it.
This is kind of interesting. I've been doing this 20 years myself, mostly on the integration space. And a frustrating aspect for security managers, especially someone who took over for another manager before them, they have aging equipment out there. And the frustration is a lot of times they really have no idea what they do have within their organizational footprint. So, what is interesting to me is that if the topology is created appropriately, or these maps created appropriately, and when changes are made, I guess it auto corrects the topology.
So so the switches go out and talk to the devices, and if you change any kind of topology with that actual network connection, then the topology will automatically change on the switch's GUI interface. So so you are correct with that. And a lot of times I've talked to some of these security managers, and this is really a feature they love about the smart managed switch is that you do you get handed a network that you have no clue how much might be on it. And with the smart managed switch, you actually can plug it in and it'll go out, look at all the devices. This is even if you have a switch in place now. So let's say you had bought, just a regular layer 2 PoE switch prior to that. You could I actually have integrators telling me to put a switch in front of that switch just for this discovery process. And of course, you're still going to do a walkthrough. But what the Smart Managed Switch does creates topology, which is actually printable via a PDF file. It'll save it as a PDF file. And then you can actually use that as a reference point. The other place where this comes into play is that when you do an initial installation of your actual security network, the topology map will be built by the Smart Managed Switch. Then, like I said, I can save it as a PDF file, and I can use that as a reference. I can print it out. Now, here's what the problem is. Down the road, we all know somebody goes to that switch and starts plugging other devices into it. And then they might have a bandwidth problem, or they might have a PoE problem. So what you have in your hands is you have an actual PDF file printed of how this network looked when it was installed and it was up and running, and you can even have the customer sign off on it. And then you go back and look at the topology now, and you see like 3 other devices were plugged in because obviously the Smart Managed Switch adds those to the topology map. And now you can start kind of troubleshooting of these other devices that were plugged in and what might be causing the problem with that.
And I just think that's so powerful because 15 years from now I know technology changes more rapid than that, but theoretically 15 years from now, I can pull a new map and know exactly what's on my system.
Exactly. If things happen to get removed, what happens is they will turn a different color, like I said. So the map comes up as a black indication of all the devices. If a camera gets removed, it'll turn red. So what'll happen is the first thing is you get a visual indication that, hey, the camera is disconnected, and we don't know why yet. Somebody, it could be a cable problem, it could have got cut, it could be a failure in the camera, or it even could have been removed. So the key to the topology map is in the dashboard, it's going to give you a message saying it was network disconnected, first of all. But the second thing that's going to happen is it's going to actually give you a tab that says remove on it, because somebody could have purposely went out to the network and said, hey, listen, I'm taking this camera off and I'm putting this device on instead. So even the Smart Managed Switches give you the capability, because you purposely disconnected it, to remove it, and then of course plug in another device. It'll go out, send out the discovery, and we'll add a new device to that topology. So the key is you can change your network along the way, and the topology map will just fall into place, and we'll go out and discover new devices as they're put on the system.
Dennis, this is all pretty exciting, and it quickly helped me understand why a switch does matter in the security space.
Today, like I said, there's really been, I don't mean a pun by this word, but transition of of these actual switches, right? So, like I said, the beginnings of security networks, people put on unmanaged switches. They didn't really care. They were more concerned about the cameras and other devices that they were putting on there. Then it has now migrated to, you know what? These diagnostic features, this management capability, this this is helping me on the OpEx side of my network. You know, a lot of people talk about the CapEx side, which is buying the initial equipment. And of course, that is a concern for customers and for network integrators. But the key is how much is on the OpEx side that you're saving. It's kind of funny, Scott, because we look at some comparisons, and depending on what area of the country you're in, you roll a truck, one truck rolling cost almost pays for this switch to start out with. So if you think about it as, all right, you have a CapEx cost to start out. But if I look on the OpEx side, because we have the guys, yeah, you go install it and buy it, great. But now they've got a whole management team that has to manage this network and has to keep it going. And their costs on that side can really add up after a while, where, again, the smart managed switch now cuts a lot of the OpEx cost off. So if I combine the CapEx and OpEx cost, I mean, practically the switches are paying for themselves.
I don't disagree. Rolling the truck and again, just removing the management frustration of even knowing what you have. All of these are major cost savings. I would like to actually just kind of close this up as we're running out of time with one question. And your background suits you to answer this question. I believe these switches that we're talking about are really geared toward the security space. So what really does differentiate these switches from any standard switch that I can buy off the internet that's focused on truly just a standard network?
So I think the major management and diagnostic features that are in there that we kind of talked about. So auto discovery of the network devices, uh, creating a automatic topology map showing you what your network, how all the connections are made. It actually shows how much PoE power is being used and how much bandwidth is being used on a per port basis. The auto power reset feature, which again proactively monitors my network so I don't have to roll trucks and reset devices that I can do automatically with the switch. The cable diagnostics, I think, is just a feature that everyone appreciates. You just don't know how many times I go out and crimp a connector on and I didn't push the pin in far enough, or something like that, where this type of mechanism can show that there is a physical link problem with it. Even the PO status screens on the smart managed switches show how much power is being used by the device. So not just how much is allocated for it. If it's a PoE device that's AF standard, which is 15 watts, it'll show up as class 1 or 2. If it's 30 watts, it'll show up as class 3 or 4. What it means is it allocates that much power to that port, but the smart managed switches actually show how much power is actually being used. So it might allocate 30 watts, but it's only using 2 watts at a particular time. Another aspect of that is as cameras get older, they start using more power. So this is something that, again, they can use to monitor how much power is being used on each port. They know how much of their budget is left over. And they know how much cameras are taken based on what their age is. Those types of features are helping out the customer side of the network. They're helping out the security manager side. They're helping out the integrator side. It's kind of helping out all aspects of it. Like I said, from installation time all the way out to where I'm fully managing the network based on these capabilities.
You really did a great job summarizing, and I appreciate that. Dennis, to bring this whole thing to a close, can you tell the listening audience how to possibly reach out to you if they were to have additional questions or wanted to learn a little more?
Definitely. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you letting me get on this podcast today and talk to you about the security marketplace. You can definitely go to our website, transition.com. We have a lot of information about security out there and security networking. There is a small 6-minute video out there under our solutions tab that you can actually review, and you can see some of the aspects that we were talking about today. And please, if you want, reach out to transition.com. And again, if there's any other types of inquiries, we have a full staff inside that can take any kind of information that you want to send to them.
And Dennis, we're an industry that believes in our network, not the network we just spoke about, but our personal network. If they wanted to reach out to you personally, are you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn. Yep. I'm out there with my name and under Transition Networks. So that's definitely a way you can reach out to me if you will have any questions or need any kind of product information. And I also have a company email, which is dennist@transition.com.
Dennis, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for educating us today. And with that, I want to say have a great day.
All right, Scott, thank you so much for having me. And again, I appreciate informing the people that listen to your podcast on this particular topic.